All right, I think we will get started. Welcome everyone to our event tonight. We are so happy to have all of you here. My name is Kylie Flynn. I am one of the CISCA grad student liaisons, and I'm so excited to see you all tonight. I'm going to pass the torch over to my co-liaison and let her introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. Thank you again for joining us tonight. My name is Casey Salazzo. I am the other graduate student liaison for CISCA, and I am a student at Fairfield University. I'm in my last year of the program, so I'm at my internship at Hedda Meadow Elementary School in Newtown, Connecticut, and I'll be graduating in December and then going on to another internship for my LPC. So Kylie, I'll hand it over to you to do your introduction, and then we'll hand it over to our panelists to introduce themselves too.
Fabulous. Thank you, Casey. I'm admitting people, and I failed to introduce that. I am a student at the University of Connecticut in my second and final year, and I'm completing my internship at Newington High School this year. I'm having a fabulous time, and I'm so excited for tonight. So now we're going to pass it over to our panelists to introduce themselves. We have a couple of panelists that, our panelists have one of two experiences. So either they are a fairly recent grad who has recently gone through the job application and interview and hiring process, or we have some professionals who have been in the field for some time and are going to speak as to what some hiring committees might be looking for in applicants. So I'm really looking forward to hearing from our panelists tonight. So we will start. Todd, you want to take it away?
Sure. Hello, everyone, and welcome. Excited to be here tonight talking to you about the hiring process. So my current position is the Director of Counseling at Avon High School, and I'm a 26-year school counselor. I've been in a number of different buildings, and throughout my time have been on the hiring side and on the interview side. And so I'm excited to share my insights with you. Is the format I'm going right in, or are we just introducing and then coming back?
Yeah, so thank you so much, Todd, for sharing your role and the experience you have. I think we'll continue with introductions, and then we'll facilitate some questions that have been proposed. Linda, would you like to go next?
Sure. Good evening, I guess. My name is Linda Romanchuk, and I have been a school counselor for a little over 11 years. I've worked every level K through 12 in both private and public. So those do work a little bit differently in terms of the hiring process. So I'm happy to speak to that if anybody's interested. As Todd has, I've been on both sides of it, worked for hiring as well as going through the interview process. And also I am an adjunct professor at Central. And so at Central, I worked with the internship class and supervising interns. So have these kind of conversations often with graduate students. So I'm more than happy to answer any of your questions.
Thank you so much. I think we'll continue with some of our longstanding professionals. Vanessa, oh, there you are on my screen.
Yeah, hi. Good evening, everybody. My name is Vanessa Montecorsi. I am the Director of Pupil Services and Counseling at Fairfield Ludlow High School. I actually started my career off as a teacher. So I taught for 4 years while I was going to school to become a school counselor. And then I started as a middle school counselor at CREC. And then I worked up to I got my administrative degree. So I was a department chair at Cheshire High School. And then that led me to this administrative position in Fairfield. And I was also on the CISCA board as treasurer for 6 years.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. We're so excited to have you here tonight. And next, Ricky, would you like to introduce yourself?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ricky Clark. I am a recent graduate of Central Connecticut State University school counseling program, and I am currently a school counselor at Ealing Middle School in Manchester. Prior to that, I worked in the New Britain school district as a support staff member, and I'm looking forward to meeting everyone and sharing some knowledge, and hopefully I can contribute a lot tonight.
Thank you, Ricky. We're so excited you're here. And last but not least, Erica.
Hi, everyone. I am Erica Schaebler, a recent graduate of Fairfield University. I did my internship at Fairfield Ward High School. So hi, Vanessa. And after that, I was hired for a long-term leave replacement at Newtown High School. After that, another long-term leave replacement at West Hill High School in Stamford. And this year I got my full-time position at New Canaan High School. So happy to be here.
Congratulations, Erica. Fabulous. Just to bring everyone's attention to it, we are recording this event tonight. It will be available on the SISCA YouTube page a couple of days after the event, but I wanted to bring that to everyone's attention for those that may not have been able to join us tonight. And now we will transition into our questions. So as a grad student committee, we crafted some of these questions together in our meeting last week, and we will propose those to the panelists now. Panelists, please don't feel like you have to raise your hand or anything, just jump in if you feel like you have an answer. For our other participants, at the end of our event, we will have a question and answer portion. So please save your questions and make notes of them until the end. All right. So our first question that we have in relation to the job application, panelists, for our hiring, for individuals that have sat on hiring committees before, what are you looking for in a candidate's resume? So their experience, the details on the resume, keywords, length, etc. Really anywhere you'd like to go with this. And for our recent professionals, please share any tips that you have on what you think made your resume stand out in securing a position.
You want us to just jump in?
Absolutely. Thank you.
I think, it's a competitive world out there. And our last hire, I had over 35 applicants within, a day and a half. And, we stopped taking any more applications. The vetting process for those applications really was to look to see the quality of those applications. And you need to know that what you're putting out is going to be read, it's going to be reviewed, and it needs to be top notch. You're up against a lot in those, and really making sure any little mistake or anything that's off could be the end, that you're not going to be selected for the interview process. And I would say, one of the things I would be looking for in hiring is leadership or going above and beyond. And I think that can happen at every level. So whether you're a grad student, whether you're a recent grad, I'm going to be looking that you put your time and effort into causes that are going to be benefiting students. And that's going to be one of the keys, whether you're serving on a committee on the school or you're outside volunteering, anything that really is going to jump out.
I'm going to spin off of Todd a little bit and keep going with that because that's what I wrote down is, what did you do beyond your internship? For example, the last person that I had hired, she was a newbie, but she had created a first generation college students group. So she was doing more than just going through and learning about Naviance or learning about, how to learn PowerSchool and doing groups. But she actually had created some pretty neat things for the program that she was participating in. I also look for, are you a part of SISCA? That's a big thing for me. Are you giving back to the profession? Are you getting involved? And this person was part of SISCA. Have you done any other cool, unique experiences? Somebody was for Teach for America. Did you do anything like that? So like Todd said, we read everything because we do get so many resumes. So make sure you're thorough in what you put in and that it's really meaningful. But don't be too long. I would say no more than 2 pages just because we do get so many applications.
I just want to add, a lot of times what I tell students is, and I find this just in any job, to the best that you can, if your resume can kind of tell a story, and it might not seem like an obvious story to you, like you might say, oh, I was a nanny, like how does that make me a good school counselor? But you want to kind of create that story for the people that are reading it. And there are a lot of qualities in any job that you have. And I mean, we know that you're grad students, right? We know that you're not going to come out with like 10 years of experience. So the best that you can, because that will really set the tone to say, wow, like kind of connecting the dots for the people reading it. And, you know, to both Todd and Vanessa's points, it sounds kind of negative, but sometimes when you get so many applications, you're almost looking for a reason to kind of get some of those out of there, like sort through them. So it's so important to pay attention to those details, have multiple people look through them. I mean, I am a little bit of a perfectionist, but I'll sit there and be like, wow, like if they didn't even take the time to change, like to make sure that the format was all the same, or to do little things. I mean, that does speak to your attention to detail and to your professionalism, and you're representing a school when you're a counselor, and it's really important. The other thing I'll say, I know that this wasn't part of the question, but for your cover letter, I would do a different style or different type of cover letter for each school. Like, do your research, look at the job description, make sure you include pieces of the job description in that cover letter specific to that role. And it's extra work, but it's so important. And I can speak personally for me that if you copy and paste the name of a school and you don't copy and paste, that's an automatic out. So just again, not to be negative or scary, but like it is so important to really be looking at those details.
Thank you so much. I think that was all really valuable pieces of information that we can take forward with us. Our next question is going to be a little bit more broad. What do you wish that you knew when you were looking for jobs? So it doesn't have to be something specific about resume, cover letter, anything like that, but just anything you wish that you could tell your past self.
You want me to jump in again? All right. So I think, you know, one of the things I've learned over time is to look at the position that I'm actually going for. You know, that's something you don't always know from the outside. And I know when you're first starting, you know, that first job, maybe that's, you know, we're really looking to take whatever we can get. But if you have the option where you have multiple offers or you are looking at various positions that you're applying for, research that school and really take a look at, is that position going to be a good fit for me? You know, in their literature, for example, if they list the person as a guidance counselor, that may be a red flag. If they, you know, list the person's duties, you know, as you're going to be monitoring the lunch, or you're going to be doing recess duty, you know, I think those are important things that when I started my career, I didn't even have an idea to look at. And, you know, I know that first time around, you may not have that option. You may just have to take whatever you're offered. But it is an important thing if you do have some places that you're applying to take a look at what their school is saying, take a look at their website and see what the school counseling website says. What is their mission statement? Is there a mission statement? Is there a clear message about who they are and what they provide for their families and students? And if there isn't, you know, that's a question to come up in the application process and interview process. And I do feel maybe you could make that impact when you get to that school, but you also might find yourself in the cafeteria, on the playground, or out at the buses. So I think it's really important to consider that.
Yeah, I think just to piggyback off of what Todd said, I think you spoke to some great things in terms of really knowing, you know, if you have a preferred different demographic that you want to work with, and really kind of narrowing your options down. You know, it's tough. You know, we want to get in the field and make sure that, we're getting a job or applying for as many jobs as we can, but it's super important, as Todd just spoke to. And I would also just say, what I would tell myself is just to be patient. You know, it's tough as you start seeing your classmates or some of your classmates get jobs, and like, man, like I can't get anything, or I might not be able to land anything right now. You might have that feeling, but it's super important to be patient. You know, jobs come up throughout the summer, throughout the year. So, you know, just make sure you believe in yourself, and you're patient, and you know, something will come to you. You know, so it might not be your time at that time, but something will be available for you. So just to be patient.
And I was thinking of saying that apply as soon as possible. Because if you heard Todd earlier, is within a day, Avon had 38 job applicants. So the reason I say that is because Todd and I, in our positions, we don't oversee the job postings. Central office handles that. And a lot of times what central office will do is they'll post the job and they'll say, hey, it's open from today through 2 months from now. Well, we're not waiting 2 months for you to submit your application. So Todd shaking his head, no. Get your application in as soon as possible, because we might let it go for 2 weeks and then I'm shutting it down. I'm not looking at it. I'm moving ahead. I'm forging my interview to meet team. I'm looking at who am I going to bring in now, because within 2 weeks, we're going to have a ton of applications. So definitely get all your letters ready, get your cover letter ready. And the nice part is most people are using AppleTrack, so you can already start to fill that out. So when you see a job posting, click it, submit your stuff, because literally people will shut them down pretty quickly. So I would say get it in as soon as possible. Probably the only other second thing is just get involved any way you can. I have met some fantastic people through Siska, and Todd and I are part of a directors group that we have connections with all over the state. So any way you can get involved just to meet new people and have those connections, they go so far for you.
And I'd like to jump off
go ahead.
Vanessa, great point. Oh, I'm sorry. Did someone else want to? I just want to jump on that one point about the application. I think what I've seen with the more recent applications, that there's specific questions for schools. And I think, it's important as much as I think I would echo Vanessa's point about getting the application in as soon as possible. You definitely want to make sure you're answering those questions in a way that is tailored to that institution. And that means you got a lot of research to do. It's going to be some long nights as you're putting your application together.
And I was going to kind of piggyback off what you said, Vanessa. This might sound strange, but I was absolutely heartbroken to leave my internship experience. I ended up leaving a little bit early to take a long-term leave at a school that was very different than what I thought I wanted, and ended up loving it so much. So I would really recommend that you apply to places that might be a bit outside your comfort zone. Obviously do that research and make sure that you could see yourself in this type of district. And, it seems like it could be a good fit, but the reality is, I think a lot of times until you're in a school and working with your colleagues and your students, you don't really know what the experience is going to be like. And so be open to different opportunities. I never would have, or probably wouldn't have gotten my New Canaan job if it wasn't for a director that I had met working at a school that I didn't necessarily think I was going to love, and then cried when I left. So be open to different opportunities as they present themselves. Districts will surprise you. You will like them. So
I just have two things to say. One thing that I always tell people is that every day is an interview. And I mean that, like, even when you're at the grocery store, like, you just don't know who you're going to meet. And this is a small state with a lot of opportunities to connect with people. So, like, especially like for interns, I mean, it's like everything from like how you dress and, all of it, how, when you're on time, when you're prompt, like, that means so much. The other thing is, in regards to interviews, every interview is an opportunity for growth. So if you have an interview and you don't get the position, first of all, it might not have been a good fit for you either, right? Not just for them, but grow from that, learn from that, process it and say, every interview I left, I would be like, I didn't answer that the way I wanted to. And then I'd also have moments where I was like, that was the best answer. I wish I could record it and say it every time. So, like, feel good about it, pump yourself up, but also use it as an opportunity to say, like, got to change my answer about 504s because that one did not flow, and work with it. And then you'll find your fit.
Thank you so much for all of that valuable advice and feedback. Our next question relating to the job application: what's up with the portfolio? Like, what's the advice that you have? How do we start developing that portfolio into a strong one?
I have strong feelings about this question. So I'm just going to be honest. First of all, I think, and I'm supposed to tell you to like really put your effort into that portfolio. And I do think it's valuable. I still have mine someplace and it kind of makes me laugh when I pull it out and look through it. But the way that I've always seen it was I say, make your portfolio what you want, make it what you're proud of, and bring it with you as kind of a little insurance policy. Like if you need to take it out, it makes you feel confident that you have something with you that you can speak to. Do not necessarily plan to bring it out. I always felt bad when people would bring out their portfolio and we just wanted to like get to know them and see how they interacted. And then we're like, well, we'll look through your papers. And and I shouldn't say that because I am at Central and I'm supposed to be helping people make their portfolios. However, what I always tell people is take parts of your portfolio that you're proud of. So maybe you did like a data report and that actually had an impact on your school. Put your resume, cover letter, and things you're proud of in a file folder, one for like each people, bring like 10. And when you leave them with that little gift. That'll be, this is from you, and this speaks to who you are, and it highlights the things that you're proud of and that you really want from that portfolio. And I mean, if they ask to see your portfolio, awesome, you have it. And maybe that's a school that really values that. I'm not saying that there's no value in your portfolio, but it's nice to kind of leave them with that. And I think it'll leave a little like lasting memory. I also always, and this is just me, I would always leave it in the school color, the folder. Like if it was like their school color was maroon, I'd like leave a maroon folder. But that's just me. Don't feel like you have to do that.
I may be an odd voice out, and but I'm going to say it anyways. I'm not a fan of portfolios, this is why. I really want to know what you can do, and I want to know that you can live whatever it is that's in that portfolio. So I do think the portfolio is important, but I have had interviewees lead with their portfolio, and that's not really what I want to do. And I think Belinda's point, what I want to hear from you early on is, who are you? What matters to you? What's your vision? What's your passion? What have you engaged in that's made a difference other lives? And I think the portfolio, a lot of times we've looked at that around second interview. I think on my most recent job, when I got hired at Avon, it was third interview that I brought that out. And it was really sort of clinching the deal at the end of showing them all the different things that I'd done in the programs I share. But my encouragement would be, don't lead with that. I want to know who you are when you show up to the interview.
I completely agree with Todd and Linda. If you're going to do something, just bring one thing. Truth be told, the last two counselors I hired, they both brought something that they were passionate about, a pet project of theirs, and they shared that with the interview committee. Again, that was that second go around. That was super awesome that they did that. But yeah, I'm not a huge bring the whole portfolio person either. Again, personal.
I will say in my in-person interviews, I did not pull out my portfolio once. I had it as kind of like in my big bag in case, left a resume, left a cover letter, did not use the portfolio. And then the reality is, who knows what your interviews may look like this year. A virtual portfolio is not likely a thing that you're going to have. But what I will say is, what was helpful for me is the contents of the portfolio, make sure that they make sense for the school that you're applying to. So when I applied to New Canaan, it was helpful that I had letters of recommendation that I had written for students in a similar district with me, because I could provide those as kind of like an interview task that they needed. So it helped in that way, but not once did I pull out my portfolio. So maybe that's bad advice.
Thank you so much for sharing. I think that's really helpful, and a lot of people might be surprised by that. So it's really good to know, and we can prioritize things differently if need be. So we're going to jump a little bit to more interview type questions. And if we have extra time, we could maybe go back to the broader job application questions, but we want to leave about 15 minutes at the end for everyone attending for Q&As as well. So our next question is, what are some questions that you were asked during your interview process?
So the ones that stood out to me the most that I remember were very situationally specific questions. So what would you do if this happened. I think we've all heard maybe there are Cisco questions that are like, what would you do if you had a 5:04 meeting that was starting in 5 minutes, a parent on the phone for you, and a upset student walks into your office? How do you prioritize, and what would you do? I got that question on every single interview that I sat on. So Newtown was funny. They had different index cards and asked me to arrange them and prioritize. But I would say that my biggest piece of advice is to really reflect on specific experiences that you've had and specific ways that you've managed, conflict resolution, whatever it may be, and provide specific examples and don't be too abstract. Maybe the panel can correct me if that wasn't the right move, but it seems to have worked. And then be prepared for some fun questions too. Like Newtown asked me, if you were an animal, what would you be? So I wasn't expecting that because that wasn't, one that we'd practice. So.
I think when it comes to interview questions, it's really good, again, to be prepared. Do your research, know the school, and know what their culture is all about. And I think that's a really important sort of prep for that interview. And again, I'm expecting an interviewee to have prepped a lot when they're coming in. So they're going to know my school, they're going to have some good ideas, but there may be the questions that we throw at them that are curveballs. One of the tougher questions, I think, well, it wasn't tougher, but I could see it be tougher, is about APECE. And it was, in front of about 30 people in a U-shaped table. And, there was a firing line of questions as they went down. But they wanted me to talk about the differences and my insights into both of those programs, the benefits and challenges that students may face with APECE. Same thing for a 504 IEP. So you need to be well versed in 504 and IEP and your approaches, your own either experiences or understanding of it and what it looks like from a school counseling lens. And then, one of the ones I still remember when I went for my first directorship was my most challenging case. And so what was that about? How did, what were some of the specifics? They didn't want to know names, but, and what was my involvement? How did I help that student through a challenge? And that one still sticks to me. I remember that question.
I would say that, first of all, I'm all about feeling prepared and confident. So if you go to ASCA's website, there's a long list of interview questions. And it's kind of funny. I was sort of prepping one of my interns, and I was like, every time I went to an interview, I have to remember the ASCA model, in my head right before I went, because I was so nervous that I'd forget it. And I never got asked that. And so I was like, don't worry about it. And then she called me after. She's like, they asked me. I was like, oh my gosh. So, some schools, if they are and that speaks to Todd's point about knowing where you're applying, if they're a place that made RAMP, they probably want to know what you know about RAMP and that you're interested in that kind of a school. But it does help to practice some of those general questions. Scenarios, like Erica said, are huge. And a little tip that what the scenario that they give you or the types of scenarios are ones that you would encounter. I remember they asked me about working with a difficult faculty member. And then once I got the job, I was like, oh, I understand now why that was a question because I was working with that faculty member. So it gives you a little clue. If they're talking to you about teen pregnancy, they probably have that going on relatively frequently, right? Because they want to know how you handle that. They're not just curious, right? A big thing that, again, kind of was a deal breaker for me when I would interview people was we often led with, so why are you interested in working here? And if people were like, or, I don't know, or, well, I need a job, that was kind of like, whoa. But if people were like, well, I looked at your strategic plan on the website and I'm really interested in the mission and I love working with this population. Those kind of speak to those things. And it really hints that you're doing that research and you're doing your homework, which is super valuable. The last thing I would say, and again, Erica kind of said something like this, is I would go in knowing things that you want them to know about you and figure out how to insert it. So if you want them to know that you're an awesome multitasker, somehow when they're asking you that scenario question, be like, well, actually multitasking is one of my strengths, I have to say, and this is how I would do that. And just make sure that they're getting those takeaways from your personal strengths. You insert them however you want, but that is really huge.
Similar to the question of, why do you want to work here? I feel like people always mess up the question. So tell me a little bit about yourself, both personally and professionally. I feel like people just have no idea how to answer that question. And it's not a time for you to like rattle off your entire resume again. It's to pick up just a few highlights that you really want us to demonstrate for the committee. And I also add the personal piece to it, because I want to know a little bit about you. We're going to have to live together for quite some time. So I want to make sure we jive. And, tell me you do CrossFit. Tell me you like binge watching like Netflix or Game of Thrones or something like that. But when I say personal, I really want to kind of get to know you a little bit. And then just kind of spinning off a little bit about what Erica said, super important. Even if you haven't had that real experience yet, say, I haven't done this, but this is how I'd handle it. Or I had a similar situation and this is how I would handle it. So again, you're new grads. We totally get that. But there's a way that you can spin it so it's completely appropriate.
And I want to jump right on that real quick. I think, some of the questions are designed to stump you, because we're interested in that ambiguity and how you deal with ambiguity. School counselors deal with ambiguity every day. And if you can handle it in an interview with all these people watching what your reaction is, I have a pretty good idea that you're going to be able to handle that question when it comes to you from a parent, from a teacher, from a student, right? And it's really important. And we don't always have all the answers, right? So that's okay.
Yeah, one of the other questions that I remember or could recall is just your mandated reporting timeline. Just make sure you are versed in that and make sure that you're prepped for that. Also, just how would you as a school counselor relate to your teachers that you'll be working with, your parents, your administrators, and other counselors? How are you in relation to that aspect? So just like everyone spoke to, bring that out, make sure you insert that, and you'll be fine. But those are the majority of the areas that you have to be versed in and confident going into your interview.
Thank you so much, everyone. Great insight. I'm loving this. So our next question is, what are some questions that we as applicants or interviewees should ask regarding the position at the end of the interview? For example, like what are the duties that might look different in different school districts, or really anything regarding the questions that we should be following up with at the end of the interview?
I'd say, first of all, always have a list going into it of as many questions as you could think of. Some will be, sort of kind of canned, I guess, but really the more genuine ones, the better, if you can. And the reason I say come in with a lot is not to ask all of them, but because they will get answered along the way, and you literally might just want to check them off as you get your answers. And the more you come prepared with, the more likely you'll have something at the end to still ask. Because when people ask, like, do you have any other questions? And they're like, nope, I'm good. Like, it just kind of leaves you feeling like, are they really interested? Is there anything else they want to know? And it's really valuable to have something. I oftentimes will always just have, the questions of, what are some, you could ask sort of about the training process, in terms of when someone is hired, what kind of support is available for them. You could speak to professional development opportunities, or if there is a specific thing that you know about them from their strategic plan or from their website, you can ask more about just oh, I saw this program that you have at your school that was really interesting. Can you tell me, would I be involved in something like that? Because I would be really interested in participating, asking kind of additional responsibilities or duties that they're looking for this position. and really just kind of highlighting like your interest and excitement for wanting to do more of that. Not necessarily wanting to take on all this extra stuff, but wanting to be part of the team.
One thing, I think this is a good opportunity, you know, kind of how everybody's been speaking, to figuring out if a school is going to be a good fit for you as well. So I knew for me going in, it was going to be really important to work in a very collaborative department. Like I wanted a department where the counselors all worked together, where the administration worked with the counselors, where the mental health team worked with the counselors. So one of my go-to questions was always like, what does that look like within your department? What's the structure of your department? Even down to like how are your counselors set up in relation to your other mental health team members? I don't know, it was something that was important to me as far as finding a good fit. So I think, you know, make sure that the question is purposeful and you're not just asking to ask, but ask something that actually matters to you. And to Linda's point, I cannot stress enough, so many of your questions are going to be answered. So you don't want your question to be something that they literally answered for you 7 minutes ago in the interview, but then you don't have anything else to ask. So you ask it anyway in a weirdly reworded way. No.
I think if it hasn't come clearly through the interview process at this point, you know, it's a good time to ask about the roles and responsibilities, or what is their expectation or vision for school counseling in their school. And it's an interesting response. You know, I've asked that question before, and I sometimes get different answers from different people on the committee. And I think that's interesting as well. I find power structures within schools be something that I really enjoy figuring out. And, you know, you have named positions, but then you actually have power positions, right? And the power brokers within a school, as a first-time teacher or first-time school counselor, or a new counselor into the building, is really important to figure out. So there's some people that may have the name of a power position, but there's others that actually have the power and their voice is the one that carries. And I think that's always interesting to ask in an interview process and see what the reactions are around the table.
I'm going to concur with Todd, Linda, and Erica. I really don't have much else to say. I think they all hit fabulous points. Really going on the school's website, checking it out. Does anything touch base with you? Maybe looking at the school's school improvement plan. I mean, right now we're living in a time where social emotional health is so important. I know one of our 3 goals this year is specific to social emotional learning, which is super important to all school counselors. I also talked to another director on the other side of the state, and she's mad because they don't have any social emotional goals this year. So if that's super important to you, that's where I would start too.
Another takeaway, I asked my staff today why they hired me. One of their statements was, we had some candidates and they dropped these buzzwords, but it wasn't clear that they knew what they were talking about. They sort of just knew the lingo. They said, when you talked, it was clear that you understood what you were talking about. You made connections with it. So I would say pick those key points of things that you've done in your buildings or that you have a good understanding with and hammer those. Make sure that the committee understands that you know what you're talking about and that it's relevant and you're going to be able to bring that into the building. Don't just throw things out there that may be great words to say, but don't have any substance.
Todd, that's a perfect, oh, go ahead, Linda.
Oh, no, I was just going to say the only other thing was, and this, I don't think this is necessarily a bad question to ask, but I always feel bad when interviewees ask this and then get like kind of a weird response. So I'll just put it out there. But oftentimes when people will say, what's a typical day like for a school counselor at your school? I feel badly because it's not a bad question, right? You want to know more about what it's like at the school, but the instant response from the other people is, well, no day is typical. It's like, totally crazy. And, like your schedule goes right out the window. And it kind of makes you as the interviewee feel like, oh gosh, like, did I just ask something I shouldn't, So if you do want to know more about like what a typical day is like at the school, you could always lead in with like, so I know that there's no typical day, and just kind of put it out there just because it does show that you've had experience and you all do understand that. But I always feel bad when they kind of lead with that and then they just feel like knocked down at the start, when it really is good to get a sense of like the culture of the school, which is really what you're asking. So just a little little minor thing. Sorry.
No, I'm so glad that you added that because it's true. It speaks to exactly what you were saying before, that you want to go in feeling confident and hopefully leave feeling confident too. So that last question, you want to be prepared to set yourself up for success. And our next question is, what are you looking to hear from candidates in the interview? Todd brought up maybe some buzzwords, any specific experience, any language. Is there anything that you're specifically looking for or that stands out to you?
I want to jump off of Vanessa's point that, the person that I'm hiring is someone I'm going to work very closely with, that is going, on a day-to-day basis. I spend more time with my school counselors than I do with anyone else in my life. And so that person across the table that's going to be coming into my department is somebody that needs to, be able to have a good sense of humor, be able to, laugh along with us, and be able to do the job. And I think, so that's, I know I'm flipping that question a little bit, but I need to hear that they're, down to earth, that they're a person, and that they're ready to go for it.
Yeah, I think on a similar note, oh, sorry, Vanessa. We all went to school, right? We all were trained to be school counselors. So the expectation is that you understand, theory, and you understand how to do all the counseling skills. And what really makes everybody so individual and unique are your own passions and your own personal experiences and your own personality, which is exactly what Vanessa and Todd are saying. So I think what's really valuable is we want to know, what will you bring to the table? What will you as a person bring? But I always, personally had a passion for mindfulness and self-care. And when I was in grad school, I was really, really excited about working with male students of color. That was just it happened to be something that I had a lot of experience with in my internship. And that was a passion of mine. And so that was something that I could speak really well to. And actually where I ended up getting my first job, that was sort of the population. It was a large population of students of color. And it was something that I probably stood out for because that was something I could speak to as I'm going to bring this to the table. I've already worked on curriculum for boys groups, and I'm really excited about this. And so that's what they want to see, is that, and that you're relatable, and that what you weren't taught in school that you can bring. I think is huge, and that you're a genuine, kind person who can communicate and who can speak freely. When I interview with people, I treat it like a conversation. So the more you can do that and let them see that side of you and have it just be that kind of give and take of a conversation is huge.
I think for me too, everything that's been said is spot on for sure. I'm also looking to see, are you a team player? How are you going to fit our team? And are you coachable? Do you have that aspect in you? And we have specific questions around that to figure out, can we work together? Are you going to push our department forward? The last time I had to do an interview a couple of years ago, we had 2 candidates that were head to head. And what got us over determining the candidate that was moving forward with the position was, are they going to get us to that next level? Are they going to get us through that finish line? So right off the bat, we knew exactly who we were going to hire. And that's it. What are you passionate about? What are you going to bring to the table just beyond, checking kids' grades and sending applications out? Those are all really important. We want to hear, so it's not like a cookie cutter answer. I know that's what some of you probably want, but we want to hear specifically what drives you and why are you so passionate about being a school counselor?
And if you're not comfortable bragging about yourself or speaking highly of yourself and kind of selling yourself, then start practicing because it's really good to be able to say these are things I'm good at. These are things that I'm excited about that I want to help bring to your team. And that is uncomfortable, especially because we're all counselors and, we've got our, we want to help other people and build other people up, but it's really important. And it comes across if they can see somebody who's confident, especially owning that you're new, be I am new. I know that I'm not bringing all this experience, but this is what I am bringing that I can definitely share and help your team with.
And I'm going to just keep going one quick second. One of the things that I also have candidates do, if you make it to a second round in Fairfield, is you have to do a presentation. So you have to present in front of a large crew between, for 10 to 15 minutes. And while it's not the be all end all, it is really important because you have to do many presentations in front of parents. So can you speak in front of a committee? Can you speak in front of a panel? And again, this doesn't have to be your bread and butter, but it is an important part of our process in Fairfield.
And to piggyback, I had a pretty unique experience in my interview for the second round. They actually brought in students to host the interview, so that was super different. It was pretty exciting because I was able to directly speak to the students that I was going to be working with. So just preparing for different situations, do different things. So just kind of being prepared and make sure you're doing your due diligence, and you're aware of where you're interviewing, and obviously the school and things like that everyone also spoke to. So you're gonna see different and unique experiences during this interview process.
And I would say too, just to kind of piggyback off what Vanessa had said earlier when talking about like the tell me about yourself question and being personal, one of the things that I always include in that question is I'm obsessed with reading and I'm a huge Harry Potter nerd. And that's weirdly relatable for some reason. So, all of the administration that I interviewed with always will still to this day come laugh at me and make fun of me about all of my Harry Potter things. So it sticks with them. So those little personal details that you can include, I personally think kind of make you stand out and help to make you memorable. So I don't know if there's something that's like a little bit quirky that maybe you would be a little hesitant to share under normal circumstances, don't be, and make it personal and share.
And just spinning off of Erica, we had a candidate that wrote a recommendation letter, a fake recommendation letter, and she used the name Katniss Evergreen. So if you're used to that trilogy, and we just got the biggest kick out of it. So yeah, showing your personality, showing your passion, it's really helpful.
Fabulous. Amazing advice, as have been all of your answers to all of our questions. In keeping with time, we're going to transition now to the last part of our time together. This is opened up to attendees. What questions do you have? Feel free to either write them in the chat, or we're a small enough group, I think, that if you want to unmute and ask your question, we invite that at this time.
Hi, folks. Thanks so much for being here and for all your great advice. I have a question for you that's very relatable to the time period we're living in. Virtual interviews. Is there any specific advice that you have in terms of virtual interviews and how we can continue to sell ourselves online and through a remote platform?
I'm happy to jump on that. So I think one of the keys is to dress for the interview, right? And to make sure that it's a professional experience, that you are going to be presenting to a group of people that are really evaluating you. And so I think even in a virtual environment, that's important. And I think trying to navigate all the other things that go on in our world in a virtual way as much as possible. So if you have, if there are children at home, making sure their childcare selected, just like you would if you're going to the interview. If you have pets, that are going to be climbing on you or licking your face, probably not the best plan on an interview. Although, sometimes pets are part of an experience that can normalize you or humanize you. I reached out to one of my former colleagues who just got a job this year as a school counselor. And she said in her interview, her dog started barking, and, she took a moment to calmly settle them and then come back. And she said that was one of the things that the interview committee really appreciated out of her, because it made her human. And I think just like with any other distractions or things that come up in an interview, make sure you handle it appropriately and then come back to it, because that tells us as interview or as evaluators, you're able to handle those things that are going to be thrown your way.
Make sure to practice the virtual experience too. I am a huge fan of practicing interviews. So like I had a friend who was willing to interview me literally with the ask a questions. And we did it via Zoom because I knew I was going to be Zoom interviewing. So make sure you have an appropriate background, make sure there's not accidentally like 7 bottles of wine or something behind you, obviously. And then I don't know if this is going to be the best advice, so maybe the interviewers can jump in, but I say, you know, use the virtual experience to your benefit. And, you know, for me right now, I literally have notes right in front of me because there were important things that I wanted to remember to touch on, and you can't see my screen. And so the reality is, if you are doing a virtual interview with a school, while I don't think that you should be like on their school website and pulling all your information in the moment, you still need to be prepared. I had little bullet points that I wanted to make sure that I said in my New Canaan interview, and nerves come up. Dogs were barking for half of the experience, and so you forget. So using it to your advantage, I think, is okay. I don't know.
And I would just add, obviously all those points, but if you're able to, like if there's not some type of emergency or person that you're trying to stay in touch with, keep your phone out of the room, because that is kind of a nervous habit that we all do mindlessly. And, you know, you just don't want to kind of get caught up in that if you can. It's a distraction, or if alerts come up and you're just looking and it kind of throws you, you probably wouldn't have it out in an interview, hopefully, if you were in person. So just trying to be mindful of that as well. Kind of forget sometimes, but important.
Just making sure your background is appropriate too.
Thank you all so much. I think we have time for about one more question from the audience. We want to be mindful of everyone's times and the panelists for joining us. So if one more person wants to ask or write it in the chat, you can go ahead.
Hi, everyone. My name is Cecilia. Thank you so much for your time tonight. I just have a slightly different question. I actually graduated about 7 years ago, and upon graduating was not able to get in the door for an interview despite trying for a few years. So I've been a little out of touch with the IEPs, 504s, Navions, things like that, but I'm definitely still very passionate about pursuing a career as a school counselor, and have been teaching SEL classes for about 7 years now. So I'm wondering if you have any advice for those of us who are not kind of fresh out of grad school with training, and how to go about kind of getting back into that realm, other than, you know, professional networking and things like that.
I would say that we're all in the helping profession. At least I'll speak for myself, and I think probably the other panelists. And, you know, if someone approached me and said, you know, I'd love to interview about current trends, prepping myself for getting back into the interview process, I'm sure that I would say yes. We'd have to book that because, you know, our schedules are pretty crazy, but I'm sure we would find a time. So I think a couple of us offer to share our contact information as well.
Absolutely. And I would even say, you know, ASCA had their conference in the summer. It was all webinars. So you can even go on ASCA's website, see what they offered as some of the workshops, and that I think that would help you. So that's kind of the beauty of being all virtual, is that regardless of where the conference is, if it's here versus California, you can get that information. So definitely hit up ASCA's website. And Cisco has been offering some great webinars as well. So.
Great, thank you guys.
All right. Well, I want to say thank you for everyone for being here tonight. Just some final logistical points. We did advertise that there's going to be a door prize for our attendees tonight. So we will be taking care of that after the event. We took everyone's name. We'll be randomizing, raffle, you know, choosing the name. If you are chosen, we will be contacting you via email. Like I previously mentioned, this event was recorded, will be available on the Connecticut School Counselor Executive Director YouTube page. And unless Casey has anything else, please join me. Thank you so much to Vanessa, Todd, Linda, Erica, and I know Ricky had to pop off, but thank you so much for your time. If you are willing to be contacted by our attendees tonight, please feel free to put your information in the chat. Thank you. I see you guys have pretty much already done that. And attendees, I encourage you to reach out And thank you for everyone for attending. Casey, anything else?
Just want to echo Kylie's thoughts of thank you so much. I know it's a really busy time of year and everyone's really busy with the pandemic and everything. So we are so grateful for all of your insight. So glad that we were able to record this, and we'll be sending it to the 6 schools in Connecticut so everyone can feed off of your knowledge. So thank you again.